All right, welcome back everybody to part two of Empower You. Today we're talking with Karen McKY, who is here to talk to us about our beliefs around money. And Karen, in part one, we were talking a little bit about PSYCH-K, what it was, the conscious mind, superconscious, and the unconscious mind. Now, let's take it a little bit further now and talk about more about the money beliefs. You wrote a line here to me earlier today, and it says money beliefs can take us into self-discrimination, submission to others, and being inferior. I want to hear more about that.
Well, if we go back into the information that we were sharing before, about all the greed and the competition and unworthiness and things like that, that really leads us into a place where we submit ourselves to others. We don't feel as good as anybody else, and we don't feel as deserving as others to have the money that we do believe, or we are worthy enough to have it, but we don't believe that we are. So therefore, we don't manifest it. And where did all that get started was, the big question about it is, it actually started many, 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 many years ago when people wanted to be able to control the population.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they were working to control the population, if we can keep people in fear, we can control them. And if we can also keep them poor, we can control them. So fear and being poor go hand in hand. If we can keep people afraid of the powers that be are going to be able to control all of the food and any of the other goodies. Nowadays, we have internet services, and what happens to our businesses now if the government or whatever would shut down the internet? Can you imagine how many businesses would just tumble?
Even in some countries during the Arab Spring, they would shut down the internet. Turkey, I think, did it too during some kind of confrontation type thing that people were having. They shut down the internet so they couldn't spread news. I mean,
right.
that would be horrible if that happened.
Yeah, so that's why it's very important for us to be empowered people and to understand that we really do have an important place here. We have to demand things from our government to be of service to us, not us to be of service to it. So anyway, back to being poor and living in fear. So we're conditioned, and we're picking up on our beliefs from all these other people and all of these collective consciousness and other things. Religion even has been one of the biggest contributors to this understanding that we're not deserving of money. And again, if you have to tithe 10% of your income to the church becomes quite wealthy. And the church used to be the holder of all of the information. People weren't allowed to read the Holy Scriptures and things like that at all. And so there were very few people at the top that had all the answers, and they controlled the masses. And we still see this happening today. I mean, if you think about the political things that are going on in the Middle East, a lot of that is not government, it's religious government. And so They're keeping the people downtrodden because they don't want them to have the answers.
So can I ask you a question? Because my head's ready to explode here.
Go for it.
Oh, it's a really simple a question. How do you define money?
Oh, good one.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I define it very differently than most people. To me, money is energy in circulation. So if you want to take it to the spiritual realm, I think it's God in circulation or universal mind in circulation. You put the word on it that you want, but I see it as the universal flow. So if I'm not experiencing abundance in my life in whatever way, shape, or form we would call that, I have to look at where do I have blocks, because I'm blocking that flow for some reason. Again, maybe I'm not deserving of it, so I put a block up. It's just like putting a dam in a river. If I'm not in the flow, that's because of something I'm doing. And probably it's a belief that's been given to me from probably past generations. And maybe those past generations didn't even know they had it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, what you just said and what you were saying earlier about control. I mean, I don't think most people understand how the whole system's set up in the first place, which is a whole nother discussion that we could have about what is it, what's that about, and the whole concept, right? The whole system that's been set up. But as you were talking just a minute ago about the universal flow, it's like if like with the work that you're doing, do you just focus on the money piece, or do you focus on the whole? Because
Yeah.
What I was picking up is like, well, wait a minute, why do I just want to focus on the money energy piece? Why don't I focus on the whole? And the money piece is just a piece of the bigger pie.
Yeah, it seems like that would be that it would be more pervasive. It would be happening in other areas of your life as well.
Well, exactly. So I'm really happy that you guys are onto that, because that is the whole purpose of PSYCH-K, I think, at this time, being here on the planet, for us to use its resources and these skills and processes. We are holistic beings, and money is just one example of flow. But we block other kinds of things too. We're blocking the love of other people in our lives. We're blocking rich experiences coming into our life. I mean, my daughter's been able to travel the world. Now, had I ever imagined that for her when she was a child? No, not to the extent that she's traveling. I mean, she just came back from Russia, for crying out loud. And I'm like, oh my God. So there's all kinds of things that we block. And it comes down to our belief structures. Do we believe we can do this or not? I mean, it's Henry Ford. That was a Henry Ford quote. If you believe you can or you can't, you're right. So what do we want? You know, this brings us to a very important question. What do we want in our lives? Most of us spend our time so focused on what we don't have or what we don't want, but we stay stuck there. I mean, we will go over and over and over and over the things that we don't want. And guess what? The subconscious mind never hears negation. So when it hears I don't want, it hears I do want. So I don't want to be rich. The conscious mind hears, that's actually not a good one, but it doesn't hear negation. So it's an abstract thing, and it confuses the conscious revelation of what we really, consciously we do want something, but the subconscious gets confused. So we have to be able to be very clear and specific about what we do want. Like if either of you were to tell me today, I want a Rolls Royce, let's just say for fun, right? I want a Rolls Royce. Well, would you focus on all the things that you don't want instead? Like I don't want to sell my car. I don't have a garage for a Rolls Royce. I don't have. You probably would spend a lot of time focused on that instead of saying, the heck with everything. Let's just go check it out. Let's go drive a Rolls Royce. Let's put down some offers. Let's check out the internet. Let's find a Rolls Royce that's for sale. You know, people who are very financially well off don't spend a lot of time thinking about all the negatives. They go for what they want. It's almost like they have blinders on. You know how horses have those blinders on?
Right.
They can't see all this other stuff out to the side. All they can see is what's right ahead of them. So having that kind of tunnel vision type of thing, very focused energy, that allows people to move forward because they don't get distracted by all the other stuff, the negative things that would hold them back.
But if you have tunnel vision to the negative, then you can see that's you're bringing up all the negative things instead of the positive. So that's what you're seeing in front of you. Then is just the next I can't or I won't or it's not going to happen.
Exactly. And that's so important because I look at it as a spin. If we're spiraling downward, guess what? It takes just as much energy to spiral downward as it takes to spiral upward. It doesn't take any more energy. We think it does, but it doesn't.
It actually probably takes less.
Probably, because once you get into the higher vibration qualities, I mean, it's joy and bliss and happiness and all of those wonderful things. Those are such high vibrational energies, and it's a delightful place to be. So yeah, it just gets easier and easier. I'll go with that.
Yeah. I want to ask a question about semantics here. I know this is semantics, but the word want, I've had a lot of different people tell me that the word want implies a lack of something, that you're missing something, because if I say I want a Rolls Royce, then obviously I don't have it. So can you clear up anything around, that word or the energy of maybe that word?
Yeah, well, first of all, the subconscious lives in the present moment. So
Mm-hmm.
want is futuristic. It means we don't have it yet. We're wanting it because we don't have it. So the subconscious doesn't understand future. It lives entirely in the present moment, specifically in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to be able to get rid of words like want when we're doing what we call a PSYCH-K balance process. The statement that we're balancing for never has futuristic stuff in it at all, because we have to be in the present moment. So it is more like, I have a Rolls Royce. I enjoy driving my Rolls Royce. Whatever it is. So want is not a part of the work that we do. That's the conscious mind piece. So then we have to take it from conscious mind and say, okay, let's take it into the subconscious understanding about having it. I am that right now. So if we're talking about a state of being, I am calm and confident. I am living in a world of abundance. A lot of people don't even believe they live in a world of abundance because they don't have much money or they don't have many things. So they think they're not in an abundant place. But we can have abundance with relationships. We can have abundance with love. It's like we live in an abundant world. We've got plenty of food. It's just, some of us have distribution problems, or some countries do. But it's really very important for us to understand that abundance is all around us.
So can I ask you a question? Because as I'm listening to you, it brings back horrid memories of affirmations, positive affirmations, right?
Yeah.
I have a Rolls Royce. I have it in my garage. I'm driving my Rolls Royce. And I think, I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago about the movie The Secret, and the one thing that really the one drawback I think with that whole thing is if you think about it, if you have these positive thoughts in the moment, like I have a Rolls Royce and I'm driving this great Rolls Royce down the road and blah, 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 that magically one of these days the Rolls Royce is going to show up. I think there's more to it. There's more underlying that aspect of the whole affirmation piece that's really important. And how does PSYCH-K deal with that?
Right.
Just having those positive thoughts aren't going to create you having a Rolls Royce, I don't think.
Right, exactly. So one of the big things, there's certainly is a process that we all go through with the PSYCH-K understanding, so that every time we want to do a balanced process, there are specific steps that we're going to go through. One of those is being able to write a well-formed belief statement. So we want to make sure that a belief statement is in the present tense, for instance, that we aren't having a futuristic type of a goal. So we make it as though it is in the present moment. And I know we got off on this tangent about a Rolls Royce, but let's stay with it. One, though. It's not a bad thing. So I have a Rolls Royce, or I enjoy driving my Rolls Royce. So your conscious mind goes, oh, come on, Karen, we don't have one of those. What are you talking about, a Rolls Royce? Come on. But the subconscious does not know the difference between real and imagined. So what happens, though, is the subconscious says, well, okay, I understand our reality at the moment is we don't have one, but we're doing this balance process so that that is our reality. Then that starts bringing in the law of attraction. So we subconsciously bring our conscious mind and our subconscious mind into alignment so that they're both focused on the same thing. And then we work with our electromagnetic attraction factors to bring those realities together so that it does manifest for us. But I love what you're talking about the affirmations, because I agree. I've had people say, oh, just say that affirmation 3,000 times and it's yours. Well, here's the problem with this. It doesn't always work that way, because if the affirmation is confusing to the subconscious, like it says, I don't get what you mean by that, then we have to be able to help the subconscious understand what it is that we do mean by that. So in the work that we do with PSYCH-K, we have something called a Back to the Future. And this is V as in Victor, A, K. So it's visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And we need to help bring in those major three components to clarify what we mean by this abstract concept. I have a Rolls Royce. I don't even know what a Rolls Royce exactly looks like, so I'm just throwing it out there. But if I said I want a balance for that, one of the first things I would need to do is start having, a visual understanding of it, also an auditory understanding of it, and a kinesthetic understanding of that, so that clarifies. It's like we created a definition for that statement. I have a Rolls Royce. And once we have that, the subconscious goes, oh, okay, got it. Now I understand. And it works that electromagnetic attraction factor so that it starts to come into our life. But there's also another very important piece that we haven't spoken about yet, and that is our action steps. And we have to put action towards that which we want to have. So we can do the PSYCH-K balance process. That sets up our subconscious to say, okay, I'm on track with that now. Thank you very much. Then we literally have to move into action. So what would be some of those first steps? Well, maybe one of the first steps is I go and I go get some magazines that have Rolls Royces in them. And I look at those and I go, oh, okay, well, this is really beautiful. What year, make, and model would I want? And I start bringing in even more detail to my goal. So action steps are incredibly important. Like if somebody says, I want to get a PhD, they're not just going to balance to say, I have a PhD in X, Y, or Z, and then it magically appears in their mailbox. No, you balance for it, but you're going to have to probably go pay some fees. You're probably going to have to go take some classes. You're going to have to write, a dissertation. You're going to have to, do a bunch of things to get the PhD. Right. So action steps are very important. A lot of people say, oh, well, I'm just going to do these PSYCH-K balances and then magically everything's going to change in my life. And sometimes it does, but more realistically, we have to go from possibility to probability. We have to move that energy. We can't just be lumps of clay sitting around expecting everything to just show up at our front door.
Yeah, we actually have to participate in life.
Yeah, there you go.
What a concept.
Exactly.
I was just reading ahead a little bit of some of the things that you were writing to us earlier about beliefs. And you say something about some beliefs are silent, that we pick up or we observe them and we carry them forward. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. Well, and this takes us back to this idea of about picking up information from the collective consciousness too, like we mentioned earlier. So if we go back to this idea that we've got, kind of our little antenna here that is absorbing all of this information, the examples I had put in the information I shared with you were that, we can watch, let's say we're a child and our father is fired from his job and he comes home and he's dejected and he's feeling lost and just, completely, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to feed my family? So the child is picking up on that energy. And then that child might convert that energetic thought to something like, well, if I grow up and I go to work, I'll probably get fired too. And so maybe a person that has this, they grow up and then they just can't hold a job. We can go back and say, okay, well, let's see if we can figure out some of these things that are going on. Part of PSYCH-K is that we don't have to know what has happened. We have to know what we want instead, because we're going to replace the programming. But if the person knows what their program is, then it's fast and easy for us to help them shift that program for them. Another example might be that a child is watching the mother working hard all the time. Maybe mom goes away and works during the day, then comes home and she cooks and she cleans and she takes care of the children. And, she's frazzled. Maybe she just doesn't have time to even be with the kids very much. So a child might pick up on, oh, I'm going to have to work hard my whole life too, just like my mom, so they'll pick that up. So it isn't necessarily that the parent is even verbally communicating the message. Actions oftentimes speak louder than words. I'm sure you've heard that phrase. My mom and dad used to say that all the time. Little did they know how accurate that is.
Yeah.
So the subconscious is incredibly powerful, and it is observing all the time. And just wanted to come back to a point you made earlier too about the unconscious. I really separate subconscious from unconscious. I don't see them as the same thing. And here's the reason why. The subconscious is always, always, always alert, awake, and aware. I mean, it's on all the time. But if we have a person, let's say, that needs to have a surgery, then they go in and they have the drugs injected and whatever, they go unconscious. Their conscious mind is unconscious. But their subconscious is still very active and alert. And in fact, some people can even come back out of that surgical setting and they have said to the doctor, you made a very slanderous comment about my physical body when I was under anesthesia, and I am very upset with you. They can and report word for word what that doctor said. And the doctor is, like shocked. But this is because the doctor doesn't understand what's going on in the surgical suite. The subconscious is paying attention to everything.
That doesn't bode well for someone who's experiencing a trauma in a hospital situation or something like that. I mean, they'll come back from that with some new subconscious beliefs. So, I feel barraged already, and I'm not even, suffering anything at the moment. So is that true, though, that we're always being barraged by this? Does our subconscious not screen things out at all?
Correct. The subconscious does not screen. That's not part of what it does. It doesn't judge, and it doesn't weigh or evaluate. It's more like a sponge.
I don't even know what to say about that, because that just makes me think about all kinds of things that happen that aren't even things that, maybe we're just observing, as you were talking about the child observing his father who's been fired or something like that. And it's a wonder that we make it through life at all.
Well,
I think I'm going to start wearing a tinfoil hat.
Repel them all. Get them all back out.
Well, there's some good news to this, though, and that is that our subconscious has been functioning beautifully ever since we were conceived. So everything's okay. It's just about us understanding that we really have more control. We're not puppets.
No.
We are until the point where we get the idea that I can do something about this. I mean, we can be controlled and we can be manipulated and all kinds of incredible things until we become aware. And I think this is the biggest part of what's happening right now around the world. And I think the internet is a big part of this awakening, is that people are becoming aware of lots of different things that are going on around them. And they're starting to pay more attention.
Yeah.
And there's this whole thing about consciousness, and people are starting to become more aware that consciousness actually exists. They're starting to think about it. Eckhart Tolle's been a great person that people are tuning into these days. And we just have to understand that we can be in control of our own experience, our own manifestation. But that also comes with responsibility then. And a lot of people don't like the idea of having to be responsible. So you gotta think about, what do you want? Do I want to have this incredibly wonderful, powerful life? If so, then I have to become responsible and create that. Do I want to just play it small and play it simple and play it easy and just let everybody else control what's going on around me? Yeah, that's a choice. I mean, we have that as a choice, obviously. So what do you want? If you're the puppet, you're probably not going to have all the things that you dream about. But if you're willing to take on the responsibility and move forward and really become empowered, you can move mountains.
Right. And I think that it's all about choice. Every single aspect of our lives is about a choice that we make or have made. And being able to become aware that, I'm going to make a different choice in this moment.
Yes, I agree with you, Roger.
That comes with consciousness. So I'm wondering too, in the biology of belief, if I remember correctly, he's talking about receptors in the body that we would have to have. In other words, we have something in us has to be there that has a matching picture to something that's going on in the outer world. Am I saying that correctly? Like if you're seeing something out in the outer world that creates a fearful response, it's because there's a receptor in some of your cells that are receptive to that fear. Is that True. So are we really going in and making changes so deep that we don't even have that receptor anymore for that kind of energy?
Well, no, the cells themselves always have the receptors available. I mean, we're not going to get rid of those receptors. It's part of our natural biological hardwiring, I guess you could say. But what Bruce talks about is that we can't live in fear and protection, and also be moving towards growth at the
And
same
expansion.
time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're two they're two oppositional forces. So if we're so locked into fear, we're never going to be able to grow. So we have to be able to understand we want one or the other, and it's like turning away from the fear. We might have to put those blinders on like the horse, so that we just don't pay attention to all this other stuff. But then again, it's like, okay, let's do some belief change work so that the fear doesn't have so much power. Because if we can go to this place of saying, well, what do you want instead of the fear? Well, I want to be strong and confident. I want this, I want that. Then we say, okay, then let's create the belief statements that are going to reflect those truths for you. And we start plugging those into the subconscious now. Pretty soon, you're going to get to the point where the subconscious is so locked on to the new desired reality, that the other stuff just falls away. It's no longer holding any force over you. I know it sounds crazy, but I mean, I'm a perfect example of it. I used to be absolutely
of crazy, or
yeah, was that too? I'm sure my two husbands would say yes, but my third husband knows I'm crazy, and he's crazy with me.
Okay,
so,
we're all crazy here.
We're all crazy. Yeah, so I used to have an absolute horrifying fear of being in public. I mean, totally in front of, and this was way back to when I was a child. I was an incredible introvert. I didn't play well with others at all. I was very happy if you just left me alone, and I'd be in my room playing with my Barbie dolls, or I would, whatever, reading a book. But if I had to interact with even an individual, it was painful for me. I didn't like it. And I didn't do well with groups at all. I mean, that was absolutely terrifying. So move me forward. I get into first grade, and I'm terrified, absolutely terrified. Kindergarten was horrible. First grade was worse because we had just moved from our community in Kansas, where I lived as a little girl. And I was away from my biggest support system, which was my grandparents. And so I didn't feel, I mean, I was actually in trauma at that point in time. But I didn't know it, and nobody else did either. And so my whole grade school years were horrific, just horrific. I never really made friends well. I didn't interact well. I didn't play well with others. Get me into junior high, and I was headed down the wrong track, because now grades were being pushed down my throat, and I had to make A's, and I was making F's, and it was bad. So it just kept getting worse and worse, and it was more about the people I was around. Well, thank God, Rescue Angel came into my life, and this wonderful young lady named Trish, she took an interest in me, a personal interest in me. And she said, well, would you like to come to my house and study with me? And I was like, okay. So she started helping me find value in myself. And I started watching how she made relationships and friendships and things like that. And so I started modeling some of the things that she was doing. And I started changing who I was as a person. Well, so that was way back then. But now let's fast forward to here. I'm coming into the world of PSYCH-K, and I'm interacting in the business world, and most of it is I'm just forcing myself to show up at these networking groups. I'm forcing myself to have conversations. I'm still uncomfortable as can be, but I still make it happen because I know I have to. And I'm using all my willpower and all my determination just to get to those silly meetings. But I'm still miserable and uncomfortable while I'm there. So I'm thinking this is the way life is. There's no other alternative. Then I get into PSYCH-K, and I start doing balances about what I want. It's like I interact well with others. I'm calm and confident in the presence of groups. I'm able to stand and project my my internal confidence easily, whatever the statements are. It's like I do these balance processes, and I have no problem now standing up in front of a group of people. I have no problem going and interacting with others on an individual basis or in a group setting. No big deal. But oh my God, if people knew what I was like when I was a child, I mean, they can't even imagine it. I shared this with my computer technician this week, and he goes, "Oh yeah, right, Karen. Sure. That's how you really were." And I was like, "That's how I really was." I was terrified of the world, terrified of my own shadow. So.
And where did that come from? I mean, I guess you don't have to know in order to make the change. That's the beauty of this whole system. My mind would go to, well, if I can get to the source, then I can change it. But
Yeah.
You don't have to do that with this, right? Because
Right.
How would you know?
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, knowing what I know about who I am now and the kind of the self-research I've done on who I am, I think a lot of it ties back into my spiritual baggage, so to speak, that I brought into this lifetime with me.
Yeah.
And
which we all have, right? Everybody has.
Well, some people would be able to entertain that idea where others could not. So, that's okay. It's just my understanding, just based on my own self-research about who I am, I know that I brought in a lot of baggage. And so I had a lot of fears that were there, because for me to show up differently in the world meant that I had to become visible, and I had to get on programs like this, and I have to be willing to let myself be vulnerable in front of other people and not be too worried about that anymore. But that was terrifying. And that was only 6 years ago, where I was really racked to the core about my fear about being visible to others. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Terrified.
So are you saying that it's PSYCH-K that helped you get through this?
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, Roger, what were you saying?
I said some of us here can relate to that.
Yeah.
About not wanting to be seen.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Roger.
You're
the
welcome.
Invisibility cloak. I think I relate to Harry Potter because of his invisibility cloak, right? But it's, I didn't set out with PSYCH-K to try to get through that, but it was very obvious to me that, not that I was afraid of people, but I don't know, something in there that was just like, okay.
Yeah. Well, if you want to go down that road a little bit, I'll go down it with you. Just based on my personal experiences with clients, some of them who have also been public figures that have stark raving fear inside of them about being seen. A lot of it stems from their understandings of past lives where they were either beaten, tortured, murdered, or whatever for espousing their beliefs at that point in time, in that other lifetime. Mm-hmm. Now, some people would say it's past lifetimes. There's also another train of thought that says there's concurrent realities running at the same time, that our understanding of time is very inaccurate. So whichever philosophy you subscribe to, or you don't, maybe some people I know, they don't subscribe to other lifetimes or past lifetimes. But if you do, and you can go down that road with me, it's paralyzing. The fear is paralyzing, because if I'm visible now, then that means somebody can come after me and they're going to hurt me, or they're going to hurt my family, or they're going to do whatever. And so we've got to be able to get past that so that the person can be actualized in this current incarnation, in this current form.
And Janet, I wasn't talking about you.
Okay, good.
Thanks for sharing.
Who are you talking about? Yourself?
Me.
Yeah. That it's interesting, because I think I come across a lot of people with that same kind of fear, I guess you would call it, or feeling that they don't want to be seen. So there's probably a whole group of us incarnated here now who in some either concurrent life we're being persecuted, or we have been in some other lifetime. It's really very interesting. And yet we are being forced to come out and have these kinds of conversations and wake people up in some way, make change. So you can't do that by being invisible. So here we are. We're going to take another break and come back and join us, everybody, for part 3, when we start to get into how do we change our beliefs about money.